to call the meeting to order for the regular meeting of the Plan and Design Commission for the City of Highland Park on February 6, 2024 at 7 p.m. So we may go call the roll, please.
Okay. Commissioner Henry.
Present.
Commissioner Arnold. Commissioner Mantis.
Present.
Commissioner Brockman.
Present.
Commissioner Hecht.
Present.
Vice Chair Kirsch.
Present.
Chair Moore.
Present.
We have a quorum. I recognize Jackson Robbins, student rep, and council liaison Lidower.
And if I may, Chair, I would also like to recognize the new student representative, Alec Mendoza.
Welcome, Alex.
Welcome.
We hope that your time on the commission will be useful and educational. So, thank you. Welcome aboard. All right, so the first item on our agenda is the consideration of our minutes. So for the first meeting minutes from December 19th, 2023, do we have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, so moved by Commissioner Hecht, seconded by Commissioner Mantis. We do a voice vote, right?
Voice vote.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Motion passes.
One abstention.
Oh, sorry, an
That wasn't it.
abstention by Commissioner Henry. But those minutes for December 19th pass. That motion passes. All right. The next item on our agenda is to approve the minutes from the meeting on January 9th. Do I have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Kirsch. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hecht. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays?
One abstention.
And one abstention from Commissioner Mantis. The motion passes. So those meeting minutes are approved. Okay, so the first item of scheduled business we have today is a public hearing 2023 ZTA 010 for the zoning code text amendment to modify regulation for tents and similar structures and other sections of the zoning code. Carl, do you have a presentation for us?
For this specific item, no, Chair.
Okay.
The ordinance is not completed and staff request a continuance to the next Plan and Design Commission meeting, February 20th.
Okay, do I have a motion to move that meeting to the next scheduled meeting on the 19th?
Second.
And we have a second. We have a moved by Commissioner Hecht, seconded by Commissioner Henry. Do we do a voice vote or?
Voice vote. And I just want to confirm, it is the 20th or the 19th?
It would be the 20th, sorry.
Yep, Tuesday, February 20th.
Tuesday, February 20th.
7 p.m. at this location.
Thank
Just
you.
Friendly amendment.
Do I need to reapprove?
As long as the,
Do the two motioners agree with?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, favor?
aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. That item moves to February 20th at 7 p.m. here in the council meeting chambers. Okay. The next item of business is the public hearing 2023 ZTA 009 for a zoning code text amendment to modify the off-street parking requirements and limitations for existing uses and related regulations of other sections of the zoning code. I believe we also refer to this as the repark rule. Do we have a presentation, Mr. Burhat?
2 slides.
Okay.
So the commission discussed this for multiple meetings. Staff took that feedback and prepared findings of fact to recommend approval. And with Corporation Counsel, there was an ordinance in the packet as well. If the commission is ready to make a motion to adopt, then would recommend one amendment. It was pointed out to me by a commissioner that the first standard in the findings of fact needs to be updated. The tent reference needs to be struck, and that just needs to be re-referenced to the repark rule, which I can make that amendment if so motioned by the commission. I should have used larger font for that. My apologies. So yeah, this is the culmination of multiple meetings. multiple hearings and feedback from the commission. So there was an ordinance in the packet that accomplished that. It extended the repark rule to the B1I and B3 zoning districts, extended it to conditional uses, allows legal pre-existing non-conforming uses to go to a permitted or conditional use and use that rule. It extends buildings within the B2 and the B2RW zoning districts, regardless of when they constructed, related to that May 7th, 1997 date. And then it's also, that ordinance also reflects changes to section 150.802 sub G to recognize those above changes. That's my presentation. The report was in the packet and the ordinance was in the packet.
Thank you very much. So are there any questions from the commission for Mr. Burhap?
No question.
All right, no questions? Nope, okay. All right, are we ready to make, now are we adopting both the findings of fact and the ordinance, or just the findings of fact?
Finding of fact, recommending the ordinance for council.
I see.
Correct. The
Okay.
council's the only body that can adopt an ordinance.
Right.
Correct.
So do we have a motion to approve? Oh, sorry.
If I could, I would move that we approve the findings of fact for this public hearing 2023 ZTA 009 with the amendment that in the first finding of fact, the first finding, the term tents be replaced by the terms off-street parking and loading requirements.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Where is that?
There's two, in the first finding of fact, it says, the text amendment regulates tents and clarifies that tents are allowed, except, well, actually, we have to take that out. too. Actually, let me, okay, so it should be just the proposed text amendment regulates off-street parking and loading requirements, period, and then delete the rest of that sentence in finding of fact 1.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
My apologies, Chair. Before we vote on that, can we just confirm there's no public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any public comment for this particular item? There appears to be no public comment. So we'll continue. We have a motion on the table that's been seconded, and we need to vote on that. So you call the roll, please.
Yes, Chair. Commissioner Henry.
Aye.
Commissioner Mantis.
Aye.
Commissioner Bruckman.
Aye.
Commissioner Hecht.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kirsch.
Aye.
And Chair Moore.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The motion carries. This item has been recommended to City Council for approval.
Thank you. Okay, our next item of business is a new is this a new public hearing? Do I need to read this?
Yes, this is a new public hearing. The next two are new public hearings.
I don't have any paperwork to say anything. My husband rushed me out of the house and I forgot my notebook.
You're supposed to have it right here.
I know, and I forgot my notebook. I was,
And I didn't bring my, I approved.
Still have a bad flashback from when I was.
Yes.
And take the other one out of order.
Oh, we could actually. Let me just find that sheet real quick. My apologies, I have it in here.
let's see if
Chair
I can
Moore.
find one.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah, that's right.
No starts walking.
Chair Moore.
So the
Yeah,
meeting of the city.
I feel like I already said that.
Chair
Okay,
Moore,
thank you.
before
So
before
sorry.
you do read that,
Yes.
may I make a suggestion that we
Absolutely.
take item 4D, which is with regard to
The berms?
Yes, the definition of berms out of order.
Absolutely.
There are two members of the public here tonight on that item.
Well, they're both new.
Yes, they are both new,
Yes.
Okay,
so, but I just
so-
wanted to make mention so you could read the right ZTA number, that's all.
Absolutely. So we will take item D first before C. And I will go ahead and say, welcome to the regular meeting of the Highland Park Plan and Design Commission. My name is Karen Moore. A quorum of the Plan and Design Commission Being present, the members of the Plan and Design Commission will now introduce themselves for the record from my right.
Daniel Mantis. Adam Hecht.
Steve Kirch.
Marissa Bruckman.
Ken Henry.
The Plan and Design Commission is charged with hearing applications for rezonings, plan developments, and subdivisions under the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations of the City of Highland Park. In all matters, we recommend to the City Council based upon the testimony presented to us in the hearing. We are required to decide cases within 45 days after receipt of the transcript. All testimony is under oath. Both applicants and others who wish to speak on a particular case should present specific evidence as to why a proposal meets or fails to meet the standards for the relief requested. For clarity of our record, only one person at a time will speak, and all questions will be directed through the chair. We ask that you make every effort not to be repetitive in your testimony. Finally, we will make every effort to adhere to the schedule prepared. For tonight's hearing, if additional time is needed on a matter, it will be continued until the next available agenda. With that, I open the floor for the staff to the Plan and Design Commission to read into the record proof of publication and ownership.
Proof of publication and ownership are available for viewing at the Offices of Community Development, 1150 Half Day Road in Highland Park. Thank you.
All right, so this is for public hearing number 2024-ZTA-002 for a zoning code text amendment to modify dimensions and regulations related to berms and related landscaping, screening, or buffering definitions and regulations. Mr. Burhop, do you have a presentation for us?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Very brief. Okay, staff recommend the commission open the public hearing, take testimony, consider the request and deliberate, and provide feedback. I did include findings of fact in the packet. I posted those late today. There were findings, and then I also emailed those findings of fact out to the commission, so that if the commission is ready to act on it, they can do so today. The purpose of this amendment is to modify the definition for berm. And I have only one slide. This is my only slide. So section 150.202 is from the definition section, and in quotation marks is the definition of a berm. Included in there, included within that is the struck out language, which I struck out. And so I'll just read it real quick. Berm, an earthen mound constructed at an incline not to exceed 1 foot of vertical rise to 3 feet of horizontal distance, used to divert stormwater flows, provide a restriction to create stormwater storage areas, protect lower lying areas, enhance landscaping, screen undesirable views, and/or decrease noise. And of course, that definition was in the report as well. That definition requires a specific incline, a specific slope. In the past, the commission has considered berms of varying dimensions to ensure adequate screening and buffering. This is a relatively straightforward change. This proposed change seeks to avoid confusion that berm design is limited to that defined incline. This proposed change does not change any existing landscaping requirements within the code. That is the request by staff to the commission.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission?
And Chair, forgive me.
Yes.
I almost forgot to add, I should also add there were public comments submitted today that I did distribute to the commission. And I also, when I reposted the packet with findings of fact, I also reposted Mr. Laxner's written comments as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yes, I know I read mine. I'm sure everyone else did too. All right, do we have any questions from the right here?
One just clarification question on this slide. So it says definition requires a specific incline. That doesn't suggest that a definition requires a specific incline. It's just that previously, as it was written, it required a specific incline, correct?
Yes, I believe.
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly that a definition does not require that specificity.
What's, forgive me, can you say that again?
So the second bullet point says definition requires a specific incline.
Yeah, they just can't exceed that, yeah.
Correct. So, but my question is, for something to be defined, we don't need that specificity in there, correct?
We're recommending that it not be in there
yes.
because we
Right.
wouldn't want to
Got it.
limit berms to
Okay.
only those berms that have that characteristic slope.
Got
That's
it. I understand if it's
could be. different.
As an incline exceeding 1 foot of vertical rise, it's not a berm.
Yeah,
would be
we
something else.
just, we don't want the confusion. It
Right,
really
no, that's-
isn't even regulated in there. It's defined, and we just don't want that to be said to be why somebody can't do a berm of a different characteristic slope, right? You know, a steeper slope or a taller, berm.
Question. Is there any art, if you will, to the definition? So for example, when you're dealing with sloping trenches, there's a specific ratio between depth of the trench and the slope because that's calculated to keep the slope from collapsing, for example. Is there anything like that that underlies the dimensions that were in that paragraph, or are there any dimensions that we need to be concerned about?
A berm would have to get a building permit. So whatever reviews performed in the building permit, whether it's grading and drainage or some type of analysis, I would presume that that's looked at during the building permit phase. In terms of the zoning code, no. There's no regulation in the zoning code that requires a berm. In chapter 93, it does talk about certain berms in the right-of-way, but that's in the right-of-way, and in there it uses different dimensions. So to kind of get back to what you're saying, in that context, it does use dimensions, but that's in the chapter 93, streets and sidewalks section of code, not the zoning code.
Thank you. Yeah, that was going to be my question, if there was some kind of requirement that, I mean, there's obviously going to be shapes of berms that are not feasible, and is that covered somewhere? And it sounds like that may be covered by the building permit process. Like, you could not build a berm that, you know, looks like the Eiffel Tower because it's too tall and too skinny, and it's not going to hold together. So there must be some kind of restriction on the dimensions of a berm, which I presume is then held or handled at the building permit phase.
So that's a good question. So what you're asking is typically an issue where you have different topography than we have, but it's still a good point. What I could tell you is this definition isn't going to protect against that anyway, even with what it has in there. But I do understand the point. You could create a slope that could be unstable, right? So when you're doing your earthwork, you need to create stable slopes, and then we can look further in our code about that particular aspect of things, but this would not, it just this
That's fine,
does
and
not
I
have a
don't-
regulatory
I don't have a
impact
problem
in that
with
way.
bringing it out because that is very overly specific for berms. I just want to make sure that we're
That
not
we have
missing
other
something.
types of erosion control, a steep slope kind of provision. We'll look into that and report back, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
To be clear, you know, our concern is that this definition could be used against the city in building a berm, that the berm may find desirable. And somebody may say, oh, but look at this definition. I cannot possibly create it that way.
I completely understand. All right.
Now
Oh,
that
you
raises
have
a
a
question for me. Yeah, so would there ever be an instance where a berm could be approved without a landscaping plan? That is something that we, there would have to go through design review?
Well, for commercial or multifamily development, berm should normally require some type of design review from the Plan and Design Commission. Theoretically, somebody could do a berm for a single family dwelling. That would not come before the Plan and Design Commission, but it would still probably require some type of permit from the building division.
So we would get a say on these anyway.
Commercial, yeah.
For multifamily and commercial development, that is correct.
All right, thank you. Do we have any more questions from the commission? All right, do we have any comments from the public? Yes, please come up to the microphone, and we need to swear you in and get your name. You'll want to say your name and spell your last name.
Just on the berm, right?
This is on the berm, but again, for all public comment, we limit it to 3 minutes apiece.
In place of,
Wait, first of all, I need your name.
Robert Cool,
Okay.
Highland
And you
Park,
please
Illinois.
Spell your last name.
Kuhel.
Okay, and please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Can the berm be a 6x6 wood timber? Just dirt, just earth. It cannot be a wood timber. Along the property line, can it be a wood timber instead of a mound of dirt, 1 foot high, 3 feet wide?
Could someone from the planning department help us with that? I don't think it's a berm, though.
I'm always remiss to respond to just hypotheticals. I mean, where is this at? Is this on a commercial property, a single family property? Is this in the steep slope zone? Is it in the front yard, a side yard? I think the gentleman stipulated this would be going in the front. I'm always, I mean, we're talking about berms here. I mean, if there's timber, is that still a berm or is that a retaining wall?
I would agree. I would think that's a retaining wall. This is just specifically an earthen structure.
Well, that's what the definition says. It's an earthen mound.
Well, I can put it back
Right,
up.
not held by, and it doesn't,
But the timbers have the same purpose, though.
Okay, but it says an earthen mound, so just, yeah.
right, it's an earthen mound.
Earthen mound. And the
Yes.
timbers would be in violation?
Well, berm, again,
Wouldn't be a berm, it's not a violation, it just wouldn't be a berm. It would be something,
It would be called something else.
yeah, and berms,
irritating wall.
and berms and landscaping are allowed to encroach within required front yards in single-family district. I just want to point that out.
Okay.
So a timber in a backyard for water mitigation is legal, not legal? Maybe this is the wrong place to discuss that.
Yeah, this particular item is just discussing the removal of a specific set of dimensions that was previously included in a definition of a berm. That's all that we're doing right here. We're not rewriting the entire definition of a berm, and I don't have all the other landscaping items before us. We have just this particular one right now. So that's the only thing we're discussing, is removing this piece of language from this particular piece of zoning text.
So asking Carl, is there one for timbers?
Chair, all questions are directed to you.
Oh,
Do you
all
want me
questions
to
are
respond?
If you can respond, that would be lovely. Otherwise, we can refer to a separate planet. If you can respond, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll respond to the chair. With respect, we're here to talk specifically about berms and the staff proposal related to that. If the gentleman has questions about specific grading and drainage concerns or specific structures on their property or an adjacent property, I'm happy to discuss that with the gentleman during working hours at the office. What was the question put forward? It was about timbers, is that right? I mean, somebody who is proposing they'd have to submit a building permit. I mean, I know that type of development would be allowed to encroach within front and side yards and rear yard. It'd probably have to meet certain setbacks, but they need a building permit. It'd have to be reviewed by the building division. That's
Okay.
the best answer I can give.
Thank you. And again, that really isn't the issue before us. The issue before us is specifically removing this portion of the definition from the original definition of a berm, which is an earthen mound. Anything else is not to be, we're not discussing at this moment. So thank you for your comments. Do we have any more comments regarding this issue? Please state your name.
Steve Gold, 1581 Park Avenue West.
Okay, and please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you so much. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. And to those of you who I haven't spoken in front of before, welcome and thank you. Just a couple comments on this. The staff's memorandum identifies 4 places that the term berm is used in the code. I am aware of at least one other. I would encourage the commission to send the staff back to more thoroughly check to see where else this might be used in the code. Beyond that, I would comment on Mr. Laxner's submission before you. I confess I have not had time to fully absorb it. To the extent that he is focusing your attention on issues of berms in the industrial zones, I would encourage the commission to put their time and attention on more significant issues like how we have industrial areas zoned within residential areas in the city and not spend time on minutia like berms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, may I make a quick,
Ask the question where that other mention of berm is?
I can touch upon that. There, as the staff report correctly pointed out, it's, berm is used 4 times in the zoning code. It comes up outside of the zoning code 3 more times. But what's before us is,
Why don't you please, okay, wait, Mr. Gold, if you want to continue to speak on this, you've probably got another minute and a half, but please come to the microphone so we can hear you.
There's one other use in the zoning code.
Okay.
It's identified in Mr. Laxner's letter, but I can't speak to whether that's all of the uses since the staff missed that one.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Just,
Oh,
can I,
wait,
can
we have a
I,
question?
of Corporation Counsel, we're changing the part we're changing is the definition of berm. So that would then apply throughout the code, correct?
correct.
Wherever it's found. It doesn't matter how many other references
It
there
would
are,
apply specifically to the zoning ordinance.
because this is 150, okay.
I just want to know, like, the effect of the definition change in the code, all the instances where it's used, if there's just one that we're talking about that's not in the staff report.
And just to be clear, the one that's not in the staff report is in the definition of buffering, where it says any means of protecting a parcel from the visual or auditory effects of an adjacent use through the use of berms, fences, landscaping, setbacks, and or open spaces. So that is the last use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello,
Okay, next.
welcome to the new members. Name is
Uh,
Michael Laxner.
hi, Michael, thank you.
1967 Canal Avenue.
Okay, can you, since we haven't sworn you in for this one, can we please swear you in? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I went forward with this submittal because I still think it's an important issue that needs to be addressed. Particularly concerns 2 major properties, that most of the commissioners are aware of them, 1535 Park Avenue and the Solo Cup property. And, you have this legacy zoning within residential areas. You have $1 million properties adjacent to the 1535 property that they're under such restrictive ways that they can be built. They're stuck with a floor area ratio. They can only use a certain amount of their lot, 33 1/3%, I believe. They have restrictions on height. Light industrial can be built under bulk considerations, and you really only have to take into account the parking and stormwater and the minor setbacks. The point is, you can have an overwhelming development built on these properties that can really impact the residential community surrounding them. And from my perspective, we've been through a couple of different processes through the PDC, and it's always an uphill battle for the neighbors to try and get what they consider are the proper protections and shielding. That these are incompatible uses that would probably never even come together during a normal processing for newer development in a larger community or something. But as infill, we're stuck with this legacy zoning that just makes them so incompatible that the only way that you can really address them is to basically hide them behind landscaping. But I prefer the berm. I think the berm is much more aesthetically pleasing, and it also raises up the any type of trees or foliage that you would put on them. It gives you a greater height to eventually hide them. I submitted 2 photographs. You could see where the mature berm that's protecting the parking structure at the Highland Park Hospital does a superior job. It's excellent. I mean, it's great. The one in front of the Public Works Department fuel station is very nice also. It's very robust, but it has immature plantings. But over time, those are gonna grow in and fill in and be the protection that you want. And as I stated, the city really went out of their way to provide that and to protect the residential properties across the street. And that's, you know, I just think that's, should be the standard throughout the city. When you have these incompatible light industrial uses adjacent to residential properties that are worth a lot of money in this city. And, you know, I'm not saying that their value couldn't be decreased, but it could. And so I just would hope that the commission would look into this a little bit more and have a robust discussion on it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Fontaine.
Madam Chair, we did receive Mr. Laxner's comments, and staff will review them and discuss with the city manager and come back on those
All right.
particular matters that he discussed there.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, it seems like this is just, our text amendment is just a small part of a broader
But those are other good
issue.
points and
But yes, it's good
important
to
things to
have
take a
those
look at.
ideas for us.
Yep.
Commissioner Moore.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilperson Littlewar.
Thank you, Councilmember, it's easy. I just wanted to say by way of a little bit of background, that I really appreciate, number one, staff's bringing this to everyone's attention because the berms, buffers, all of these things did come up last year in the context of a very large project that was considered and in a particular residential neighborhood. And the direction that council did give and that staff has begun to look at with this berm project is to look at the bigger picture. And so I really appreciate Mr. Laxner's, I didn't get in until 20 minutes before this, so I've been out of the state. So I haven't really had a chance to look at the final copy or whatever, but I do know that what council had wanted to know was more about buffers and had asked staff to take a look at it. So I think that's completely within the PDC's purview. And I appreciate that you've begun on that journey.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, any more comments from the public? More questions from the commission? All right, do we have a motion to approve the findings of fact, or do we wish to perhaps send it back? What would the commission like to do?
I'll move approval of the findings of fact, recommending the change to section 150.1505B.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so moved by Vice Chair Kirsch, seconded by Commissioner Hecht. Do we, let's call the roll.
Commissioner Henry,
Aye.
Commissioner Mantis,
Aye.
Commissioner Bruckman,
Aye.
Commissioner Hecht,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kirsch,
Aye.
Chair Moore.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The motion carries. This item is recommended for approval to the city council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now let's move to item C, and this is a public hearing. Put my reading glasses on. Okay. Public hearing 2024 ZTA-001 for a zoning code text amendment to modify the plan development regulations to allow modifications to chapter 173 for fences, to modify non-conforming regulations related to fences, and to modify other related regulations regarding fences. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Highland Park Plan and Design Commission. My name is Karen Moore. A quorum of the Plan and Design Commission being present, the members of the Plan and Design Commission will now introduce themselves for the record from my right.
Daniel Mantis.
Adam Hecht.
Steve Kirch.
Barissa Bruckman.
Ken Henry.
The Plan and Design Commission is charged with hearing applications for rezonings, plan developments, and subdivisions under the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations of the City of Highland Park. In all matters, we recommend to the City Council, based upon the testimony presented to us in the hearing. We are required to decide cases within 45 days after receipt of the transcript. All testimony is under oath. Both applicants and others who wish to speak on a particular case should present specific evidence as to why a proposal meets or fails to meet the standards for the relief requested. For clarity of our record, only one person at a time will speak, and all questions will be directed through the chair. We ask that you make every effort to not be repetitive in your testimony. Finally, we will make every effort to adhere to the schedule prepared. For tonight's hearing, if additional time is needed on a matter, it will be continued until the next available agenda. With that, I open the floor for the staff of the Plan and Design Commission to read into the record proof of publication and ownership.
Proof of publication and ownership are available for viewing at the offices of Community Development, 1150 Half Day Road in Highland Park.
Thank you. All right, is there a presentation, please?
Yep, thank you. So this is a zoning text amendment for fence regulations. Staff recommend the commission open the public hearing, take testimony, consider the request and deliberate, and provide feedback. There are no findings of fact with this. Staff will return with an ordinance as appropriate and findings of fact. The purpose of this amendment is to add rights for property owners for fences and streamline variation and modification processes related to fences. So there are 2 chapters within city code. So a chapter 150 zoning code, zoning text amendment change, requires a public hearing and recommendation by the PDC, and several of the proposed changes fall under that purview. Then several of the changes are to Chapter 173, which is an existing chapter in City Code, Chapter 173, Fences and Flagpole Regulations. And then that's also discussed and are included as an FYI and for feedback and input by the commission as well. For the first one is in Chapter 150 and in 173. This has to do with traffic visibility. This is a snip from Article 8 of the zoning code. That's the off-street parking and loading section of code. No changes are proposed to corner lots and those traffic visibility requirements. However, there is a change that is suggested to this section 150.808 sub H, and this is to the visual clearance requirements. This is for where driveways meet property lines. So the requirement there is there has to be a 10-foot isosceles triangle for a clearance zone on either side, where you can only have up to a maximum of is it 3 or 2.5 feet? It's 3 feet. You can only have up to a maximum 3-foot high fence within that visibility triangle. In single-family zoning districts, the normal requirement for a fence height within the required front yard is 4 feet. So essentially, this regulation means that in a single-family zoning district, a property owner can have a 4-foot high fence, and then within those 2 10 by 10-foot triangles, they either have to drop down to 3 feet, or they have to pull the fence back at those angles to meet this requirement. Staff would suggest, should open type fences be allowed within this vision clearance zone? In section 173.001 sub B sub 2, an open type fence is one that has at least 60% of the superficial area consists of regularly distributed apertures, openings, holes. It's 60% open. Staff did provide, staff did reach out to other municipalities, and staff will package those statistics in the next report for this. So that's number one. What is the chair's pleasure? Would you like to go through all of them now, or do you want to go through them slide by slide?
Maybe let's go through them all slide by slide, and then we can go back and go one by one if we need to.
Okay. So for this one, this is the traffic visibility. The suggestion is that open type fences be allowed within the traffic vision area only for where the driveway meets the property line.
Okay.
And of course, I'm sure the commission understands the importance of the traffic visibility area, that you got to have a clear view path to see people walking on the sidewalk or street, or pedestrians, bicycles, joggers. So it's actually very important. It gets to the heart of, safety. And we do have statistics on what other municipalities do in this situation. I just want to package those and put them in the report so that the commission can see that. They're basically I'll provide you the data in the next report, but essentially other municipalities allow open type fences in the required front yards. Other municipalities do not have that same rule for corner lots. That's why we're not proposing any changes for corner lots.
Okay. Do you want us to discuss this particular item right now, or
if there's any feedback?
do we have, let's go ahead, and is there any feedback right now from the commission?
The one question I have on this point, this is regardless of whether or not there's a sidewalk present or not, correct?
Correct, because even if there isn't a sidewalk, there could always theoretically be one in the future. You're correct.
Okay. I mean, I think conceptually I'm okay with a fence that has 60% visibility, but I mean, other than a chain link fence, are there other examples of fences that offer that type of?
Staff could provide examples at the next.
That would
I
be
think
great.
that would be helpful.
I mean, open metal type, or perhaps there are some wood slatted ones, but again, to meet this definition, you'd have to be at least 60% open.
Is it such an imposition to just have a 3-foot fence? Why do you have to go, what's the 4-foot fence give you that?
But so the reason staff brought this, and there are several recommendations in this presentation, and there are different reasons for each one. A lot of it's tied to Zoning Board of Appeals variation data. This one specifically is not. This one is just a common question, request or concern that comes to staff at the desk, because evidently, just speaking anecdotally, a lot of people, contractors, property owners come in, and it either, in their opinion, either creates an aesthetic issue where they have to drop down to 3 feet, or an aesthetic issue if they have to recess it back at that angle to do 4 feet.
Because we allow a 4-foot fence. So all the rest of the yard gets a 4-foot fence.
Right, but we don't allow a 4-foot fence because of visibility. I mean,
Just right next
Just
to
with, yeah.
that's
correct,
what
within
currently, right?
that
And I
isosceles triangle.
it doesn't seem like that big an imposition to me. For the
We're just here to
safety,
collect feedback.
for safety's sake.
Excuse me, having dealt with this issue 1 or 2 times, does staff see any safety implications from making the change?
Well, no, based on the fact that other cities allow.
Well,
this, and
other cities don't impress me, okay? That's, that's good for them. That's not necessarily good for us. So that part of it, I'm not swayed by, frankly, although it is good to know what other cities do. No
I mean,
question
common
about it.
practice, no, I don't. I mean, a chain link fence, you could see through that. I mean, that's
Because
just as a
it's-
practical
Yeah,
matter,
it's
you could
really
see
a
through
safety
that.
issue, and
But, you know, so what we could say is, we're collecting feedback because we get plenty of feedback from customers, okay? And, you know, they're like, why can't we do this and this, you know, and, you know, it takes a lot of interaction, a lot of time, and then they gotta do, you know. So we're like, well, let's see why we do this. Let's see if people know and think differently now. And there are other places that do this, and you're absolutely right. Just because another jurisdiction does something doesn't necessarily mean it's right for our jurisdiction, but that's a frequently asked question. You know, people say, so what do other folks do? And the reason why we're including that in this particular case and talking about that is because that's often what's referred to by the contractors and others, like, you know, I could do this all over the place.
Sure,
Why
but
can't
you
I
want
do
to
it
know
here?
what the competition
That's-
is
that's-
doing, for sure.
Well, they
that's
just
important.
say it, you know,
important.
they say it, yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, so we don't want to be
It's not that you can't, it's
dramatically
just
more
these other
restrictive
places.
than our neighbors, because or else people won't come.
Not that all places do, but there's places that do. And so this is something that's come up, and so, you know.
All right, so what
This
if
is a
somebody
question.
puts up a 3-foot high fence that's open, or a 4-foot high fence that's open, but that lets it fill in with plants or a shrub or a hedge or something like that, then it's no longer see-through.
Well, that's correct, but I'll point out that you could theoretically already have shrubs within these traffic
Oh, I know we do.
vision zones.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah. We already have living shrubs like that.
Yeah,
So,
the
yeah.
6-foot high shrubs at the corners of street intersections are fun.
Am I
And you're
right?
trying to see around them to make sure nobody's coming the other way.
All right, that's perhaps not the discussion we're having today. Yeah.
Okay, should I
Well, it
move-
does
oh,
say
go ahead.
no landscaping right there, visual clearance, no fence, wall, landscaping, sign, or vehicle.
Yeah, it actually does say that. That is correct.
Okay, but we're specifically talking about fences. All right, so it sounds like, are you getting enough guidance here?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep, thank you. I can move to the next slide.
okay,
Modifications and variations. So currently, so this would be a chapter 150 zoning code change. Currently, as this commission knows, you can use plan developments, PUDs. You can use plan developments to modify almost any provision in the zoning code. Not every provision, but almost any provision. It's spelled out in Article 5 that you can make modifications. And then it also says that you can also modify Chapter 151, the subdivision code regulations, and Chapter 93, street and sidewalk provisions, also with the plan development. Staff would suggest that Chapter 173 should be added to that list of modifications. And that's really a streamline issue. I mean, if an applicant needs a variation or modification, they still need that. They still have to request it. This is about process and streamlining for applicants. You still have to come, you still have to ask, you still have to seek that approval. But this would make it so that right now, if somebody wanted to get a height variation, the only body that's authorized to do a fence height variation is the Zoning Board of Appeals. And this recommendation would just be that if somebody's already in for a plan development, that they be allowed to modify fence provisions. So that way the Plan and Design Commission can see an entire package, an entire project, and consider it all and weigh it all. And then also within Chapter 173, the Plan and Design Commission, PDC, there's also a suggestion by staff that the PDC be allowed to consider fence height variations if the applicant's already in for a fence materials variation. So per section 173.005 sub G, if a non-single family use doesn't meet those requirements there for open type fences of the ornamental metal or the solid type of either masonry or smooth finish wood, they have to come to this commission to get a variation to that. And this suggestion would be that if they're also in for a height request, that the commission be able to see that entire project and decide on that. I will point out that this is actually in Chapter 173, so this is technically not a zoning code amendment. This is a Chapter 173 amendment. Any comments on that?
This is just so that an applicant doesn't have to go to both commissions.
That is correct. This is to streamline it so an applicant would just come before the commission, and in the case of a PUD also, they have to go to the city council.
That each commission is getting the full picture of what the fence is going to be and where it needs a variance or not.
That's precisely right.
Okay. Jackson, did you have something? No. Anybody else?
Okay.
All right.
Then I will move on. So the rest of these changes are related just to Chapter 173. Now, there was some variation data in the report. There was a table in there. I don't remember the numbers, though. I do want to double check them because I originally drafted some of this a few years ago, and then I'd asked my colleague to update it. So I do want to go through that again, and of course, we'll be asking for a continuance. However, there was a data sheet in this, and for this one, I will call out those members who were on the Zoning Board of Appeals to reach back into your memory as best as you can. So the next recommendations really have to do with height of fences and certain unique situations. So just as a primer on fences, which is actually, this is probably where I should have started, but just as a primer. So, and I'm paraphrasing the code here, there are essentially 4 different heights that are allowed. So there's the 3-foot height in traffic visibility zones. There's the 4-foot height within a zoning required front yard if it's a residential district. Then there's fences are allowed to be essentially 6 feet in height on the rest of a property. And then fences are allowed to be 8 feet in height in select locations along railroad tracks or where a residential use abuts a commercial use. You can go up to 8 feet in height. Now, most variations that the Zoning Board of Appeals sees are for those that are going in a required front yard. So it's a request to exceed 4 feet in height. And a good chunk of those are on multi-frontage lots and often also on higher order streets. And I have 2 exhibits to go over that. And I want to point out to the commission, because this is mostly Zoning Board of Appeals work here. We're really talking single family zoning district, and we're talking yard designations. So what is a required front yard? Well, according to our zoning code, any property line that's along a street is a front yard. But in our zoning code, the way it defines street, a street can be a public or private right of way. It can be the road can actually be built there, or there might not even be a road yet. It might just be a dedicated right-of-way. All of those would qualify as a street, and the property line along that would be a required front yard. So you have these situations where you have multiple frontage lots where you have multiple required front yards, but if you look at it functionally, it's like, well, wait, that's a functional backyard. That's not a front yard. And then there's just some criteria there that does not come from the zoning code, but that's the type of criteria that staff would be looking at to potentially incorporate into an ordinance about how you determine a functional front versus a functional backyard. Talks about the orientation of the primary entrance and facade of the principal structure and the address. So two quick examples. This one is on Half Day Road. Half Day Road is an arterial road. And so this is down the street from our offices at 1150 Half Day Road. So this property here is basically a double corner lot, or sometimes it gets colloquially referred to as a peninsula lot. So this property has a front yard on the north, the west, and the south. So a home was built on here, and it primarily fronts the north. The garage faces the north, the primary entrance faces the north. Its address is 1550 Museum, which is this street up here. So for all intents and purposes, this is the actual functional front. But yet, according to the zoning code, it has 3 required front yards. And within each of those, according to chapter 173, you can only go up to 4 feet in height. And I think I do remember there was a variation for this property for fence along the south. And then this is my last example, and then I'll move into just a few other slides. So this is along Clavey Road in Highland Place. These are called through lots, except the one on the corners. Those are corner lots. So these are lots, through lots are lots that have frontage on basically 2 sides that's parallel. So you can see all these homes functionally front Highland Place. You know, that's the driveway points there, the primary entrance and facade of the home points that way, and they treat the south side as backyards. But again, according to the zoning code, these are actually properties that have 2 front yards, one on the north and south, and then side yards on the east and west. And so these properties are limited to putting up 4-foot high fences along the south, even though Clavey Road is a collector level road, which is a higher order road, and those are all functional rears. And these are questions staff get as well as variations that end up going to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So what is staff recommending or saying based on this? So all of these recommendations here are for functional backyards only. So the 2 on this slide are for functional backyards only. Allow 8 feet in height along select arterials and Highway 41. And then I guess I'm never sure how these colors will show up, but I drew a yellow box around Half Day Road where it's an arterial, and along Deerfield Road where it's an arterial. And staff would ask the commission to consider that those should actually be allowed to go up to 8 feet in height if it's a functional backyard that fronts that higher order arterial road. And in fact, if you drive these streets, you'll actually see there already are some 8-foot fences along good stretches of these streets. And then as a second recommendation or suggestion, allow 6 foot in height along all the remaining arterials and collectors. Again, if it's a functional backyard, this is not a recommendation or suggestion. If it's a front yard, that is actually the front yard. And then you can see on this map, and this map was included in the packet as well, where the other arterials and collectors are. This slide, so the top bullet point also deals with functional backyards. This would be to allow 6 foot height along unimproved right-of-way. ROW is right-of-way, where there's a functional backyard, but require a covenant to bring in conformance if a road is ever constructed, unless, of course, it meets the prior criteria. So there are situations where the road hasn't even been constructed, and people will come to staff and end up going to the Zoning Board of Appeals often and say, but there's not even a road there. You're telling me there's a dedicated right-of-way, and I can only do a 4-foot high fence there? That's in my backyard. And so that's where this suggestion comes from. And there may be at least 1 or 2 variances in the data set that also reflect that situation. Moving on, the second and third bullet points have nothing to do with whether it's a functional backyard or not. So the second bullet point is a consideration to allow 10 feet in height for sports courts. In that, those fences must meet required sports court setbacks. So that's just fences only for sports courts. Has nothing to do with regular fences. That would only be allowed to go where it would have to meet the same setbacks at the sports court. And the reason for that, of course, is, well, yeah, balls bouncing high, or being hit high.
But those would all be interior to the person's yard. It would not, none of the 10-foot wouldn't be on the property line at all. It would
Correct.
be inside from the setback.
It wouldn't be a hockey rink in the front yard on Sheridan Road.
Well, I can tell you right now that sports courts, for regular interior lots, sports courts are not allowed in a front yard, and they must meet at least the minimum side yard setback. And they can go in a required rear yard, but have to be set back at least 3 feet from a property line within a required rear yard. Those are the setbacks for sports courts in single-family districts. Now, for multi-frontage lots, there is a little more leeway to put a sports court on the long side frontage of a corner lot. And that was something that was allowed a few years back, again, based on variation data and just the Zoning Board of Appeals seeing a higher chunk of properties come in that have multiple frontages.
Or unless you call it a patio.
Patio and a fence, yeah.
I'm familiar with what you're talking about.
2 separate permits.
All right, so before I open to other, I have a quick question. This list of variances that you gave us on packet page 30. These are all.
Hard to read, but it's in the packet, yeah.
Yes, that one. Are all those the same variance? Is that for people wanting to go from a 4-foot height to a 6-foot height fence? Or are these just all different? Or are these all functional backyards?
These are all fence variations. I do want to bring you those hard numbers, but I want to wait. Well, I'm asking to bring them back at the next meeting. There were actually numbers in the packet, but I noticed one number was off. And so then that made me nervous about presenting any of them. And so I wanted to double check them. I had originally crunched these 2, 3, 4 years ago, and I had my colleague update them. And I noticed one number was off when I was putting my presentation together. And so I wanted to recrunch those numbers before I presented them.
At this juncture, are there any more questions from the commission?
Just one. How do we know how many instances are there dedicated rights of way that are not constructed?
I mean, I can only speak anecdotally to that. And I mean, I can at least think of 3 or 4 examples where there's dedicated right of way, but it's not actually built.
I'm just not aware of it. I'm sure there are some.
Again, I should be sitting down taking notes. These are things that we can follow up with some specific examples, just like I had this example here. I mean, this is actually, fun stuff. This is what planners, this is what we do. This is what we deal with. It's actually interesting. It's actually interesting. And so I should sit down and start taking some better notes so we can bring some of this information back.
So if we make a change like this, do we need to define what a functional yard is versus the definition in the code?
Yeah, I think staff would fine tune. So I brought draft criteria today. And I think, yes, staff would work towards a better definition for that. And of course, we'd want to provide an ordinance.
And also you're to be commended for choosing Highland Place as an example because that's my street.
Well, I believe we've had just again, anecdotally, I know that I've had multiple property owners call me over my 7 or 8 years at Highland Park asking, why they have to submit a variation to put a fence taller than 4 feet in height along the south property line along Clavey Road. And indeed, some probably have followed through and submitted variations. But of course, that's a process. It's a process, it's a fee. And of course, staff never gives guarantees of approvals. We have to tell people it's ultimately up to, whatever the authorized body is. I mean, we're able to give observations and indicate, well, some of these have been approved, but we can never, and so that's a process and it represents risk for property owners.
Carl, do we have any knowledge as to why some of the fencing regs are in 150 and some are in 173?
I do not know the history of that, sir. I mean, it's been that way since I came here. I do not know the history.
Yeah, I was just curious of what the thinking might have been at that time to separate them.
Well, that does get to the last staff recommendation that all the fence requirements should be housed in
Which
chapter.
is why I was asking the question.
And that just gets, again, just to, let's make things easier for everybody. Let's put stuff in one area where you can go there and, oh, there's this fence provision, this way other, yeah, I mean, we
Yeah, that
try
should
to
be in one
avoid,
place.
we try to avoid that when we can.
I think we would all agree with that. Have you got all the feedback you need?
I have
Oh,
just
we've
one
got
more
some more
question.
feedback from Mr. Roberts.
I'm just thinking here that I know there are some houses with corner lots that have an entrance, a main primary entrance on one side of the lot and the garage in the other corner. So would that count or the garage or where they park their cars in the other corner, on the other side of that corner street? So would that count as both be a functional front yard, or would it be because the property is fronting and the main primary entrance for walkers is going to be on one part? The other side would be 6 feet.
Well, I have two responses to that. The first response is, I mean, you really capture how hard it is to draft law that can capture every single situation. And that's one of course, the issues with all laws, but it's hard for them to predict every single possible situation that will occur with human beings. But I'm getting philosophical. Let's bring it back. I don't have an answer off the tip of my tongue. Again, this meeting was meant to open this can and see what feedback and comments the commission had. But those are the types of things we want to look at and fine tune our recommendation and bring it back.
And that's why we have this board for variances. So, all right, any more on the fences? So,
This is also a public hearing, and I would.
yes,
Oh,
so
sorry.
are we ready to hear from the public about it?
I have no other items. Thank you, Chair.
I'm sorry?
I have nothing else
Okay.
to say. Thank you, Chair.
Did you want to open it for public comment? I assume it's.
This is a public hearing, yes.
Okay, so is there any comment on what we have discussed so far regarding the fences? All right, no comment. So I believe you wanted to move this, continue it to next further meeting?
Yeah.
Give us a suggestion,
Was there public comment?
did you?
Is it about the fences? Okay.
No, this is just about the fences right now.
I am concerned on the turnaround to February 20th, and yeah, let's go to the first meeting in March. Let me just double check that date.
I think that's the
March
5th.
6th, no, 5th, because it's yeah.
You'll be running that.
Oh, if you guys, if the commission already knows, oh, it is March 5th, yes. Yes, so we staff would ask for a continuance to March 5th.
Okay, so can we get a motion to continue this issue to March 5th?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hecht. Can I get a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Commissioner Mantos, we'll go with. All in favor, do you do a roll call vote for this one?
Voice is fine.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. Okay. All right. All right, Mr. Fontaine, would you give us a administrative design review update, please?
Not have any except one that is going before city council next week with regard to district. A small installation on the roofs of their school buildings.
Okay.
That's going for ratification. Amendment to the plan development for that project.
Okay, thank you. Our next regular meeting is February 20th of 2024. Do we have any comment on that?
There will be one public hearing application. There will be a substantial plan development amendment for 555 Roger Williams Avenue down in the Ravinia Business District.
building is that?
New
It's the relatively new one right next to the railroad. It would be just west
Oh,
of
that's
the
the
railroad
Imperial.
track, on the north side.
The apartment building?
Yep.
They're mixed-use development, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Right near the tree.
Okay. Do we have a case briefing?
Do not.
All right, let's move on. Do we have any business from the public? All right, Mr. Cool.
Okay, so you want me to pass these out that you handed?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Okay, and then in the meantime, does he need to raise his right hand and testify again, or?
So this wouldn't be a hearing.
Okay, but he should give his name and spell it again, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Why don't you give your name and spell it again for a minute taker?
Name is Robert Kuhl, Kuhel.
Okay.
I live at 1159 Lincoln Avenue South for the past 40 years.
Okay. And again, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Carl gave me an email here saying that PDC can certainly hear anyone during the public comment section on any topic. The PDC cannot get involved in any specific application. So my comments is really for your personal education, because you may someday be on the city council, you may be on other commissions, you may be on the zoning board. I want just to share with you my frustrations and the decision that occurred on December 21st at the zoning board hearing. And attached is the best way to look at the map of the plat plan that I attached in the handout. I know there's no comments, but just listen to me for the moment and you'll see what happened. The zoning board approved the project, and the result was the demolition of one of the heritage trees on the backside of the property. You can see the large tree on the backside. That's about a 6-story high, 130-year-old oak tree, red oak tree, which actually shades my property. There is also, which the zoning board ignored, is a 140-foot side driveway, the new proposed driveway that runs along the property line. And that property line and the driveway is right across from our bedroom windows, which faces south toward the project. The driveway could not be addressed by the zoning board because it's not part of the setback rules. The setback was only for the building design itself. And the building is 6,196 square feet, and you can see by looking at the plat plan how big the project is. But again, they could not talk about the driveway. The proposed driveway further slopes 5 feet down from the street to the back of the property, which leads us to the flooding issue. I've had flooding now in the back of my property, as well as the property to the north of me, as well as partial flooding to the property on 1145 Lincoln. So this huge building and the driveway is going to aggravate the flooding issue. But again, the zoning committee for the heritage trees could not discuss the problem. All they can talk about the trees, and the result is one heritage tree has been roped off today. That's the one on the backside of the property. The 130-year-old tree is going to be taken down. You can see it on your plat plan. That tree is going to disappear any day now. So I guess what the bottom line is here is that, you know, any mitigation attempts in terms of like flooding issue, it's nothing I can't do anything about it. And the regulations prohibit me from doing anything about it because it's beyond the control of the zoning board. So I don't know where to go except to our friends at the city council. It's directly itself for their direction, if any. And of course, the last resort is, you know, from some type of civil legal action, which, as you all know, is cost prohibitive. So with that, I would thank you for listening, and hopefully my message gets through to the corporate council, because the corporate council needs to come up with an amendment to the heritage tree ordinance. The heritage tree ordinance needs to be amended specifically as it relates to the impact beyond the setback rules such as the driveway. So with that, I thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Yeah.
Is there any more business from the public? All right, well, I have my own business. I did want to comment that our senior student commissioner, Jackson Roberts, made Eagle Scout last week, and he should be very proud of himself. It's a very difficult, it's a very difficult but worthwhile achievement, and you should be commended for it, and you will always be able to say you were an Eagle Scout. Only 2 to 4% of all Boy Scouts ever reach that level, and it is something to be proud of and something to carry and something that should be recognized. So congratulations to you.
I, for one, know exactly how hard it is.
I have 2 Eagle
You
Scouts
have 2.
and a husband who's an Eagle Scout. Oh, yes,
May I make one comment?
absolutely.
I just wanted to tell the Plan and Design Commission to please put the April 2nd meeting on your radar. Corporation Council, I believe, Marcus, correct me if I'm wrong, that is the date that we expect Corporation Council to do the legal training. Oh, boy. Tuesday, April 2nd.
I have a feeling I'm not gonna be there.
Sure, heck, you have been at a number of them, that's true,
Yes,
but we
it is
really
true,
encourage
Jamal.
all to be at these. It's a good reminder for those who've already been to the Hart and Marcus show, but for those who are new, it's particularly important as well, and for those who have not served on boards or commissions, it's the most important, because it'll be the first time they've seen it.
If I may, though, comment on that in all seriousness, that's the Tuesday after spring break ends in 112 and 113. Just make sure everybody can be here.
We will,
I'm actually saying that because I get home on the 1st, and if, God forbid, the flight's canceled, I don't know if anybody else has that. You just might want to think about that.
But it's pretty much set, and it's a greatly
Yeah, great
entertaining
job.
and greatly educational experience if you can take the time and do it.
And certainly we can talk about alternative dates if it's something that doesn't work. I can look at my schedule. I'm here at all of them, so.
Yeah,
Right.
we will definitely poll the commission just again about that, but we do try to get them in the earlier part of the year so that, you know, new commissioners can benefit and start off the year right, you know, that kind of a thing.
Yes, this was just a date reveal, so.
Yep, yeah, that's all this was, yeah. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.